Life's just going along, do. Everything's great. And then all of a sudden the storm hits. Hey there, welcome back to part 2 of the Self-Healing for Sensitive Souls online event highlights. Whew. I'm Dr. Tabitha Marsh, and in this module of the event, my goal is to change your mind about stress and take you on a journey from stress to flow, all through the perspective of being a sensitive person. Now, if you have not watched the previous module, I highly suggest you do that. You'll find the link below in the description to part 1 on redefining sensitivity. But if you're ready to go, just give a like and subscribe to keep up the momentum and to allow me to do more videos like this. And off we go. All right, we're on to the second thing, and we're going to go whip through this next part fairly quickly because I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A. So we're going to redefine stress. Is stress bad? Well, of course, you know, the minute I ask this question, it's going to be tricky. If I look at any research, just like we noticed with the schematics for loneliness, we already know that there's all kinds of health detriments to stress. But I also, and I'm not going to go into that. Again, that's something I go into my program and how to address it: physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, how to cope with it as a sensitive person. But what I really want you to take away is to identify that there are actually 2 kinds of stress. And this is really important for sensitive people. There's eustress, which is considered kind of a positive stress. I mean, basically what stress is at its basic fundamental aspect is it's just a stimulus that gets us to respond in some way. If we didn't have any stimulus, we would be blobs of gelatinous goo that didn't do anything, right? So we need, motivation. We need to kind of keep going. That's more of our eustress, right? Positive stress. It's the excitement we feel on a roller coaster, if you like roller coasters. Some sensitive people don't. And it also is associated with arousal. Like what's very common for sensitive people is that their nervous system will be aroused, and they'll think that they're really stressed out when really it's just a sensation. It's coping stress. Like cortisol, contrary to popular belief, is a good thing. If you're in a traumatic situation, there was this one study, people were in an airplane crash. They actually found that the people who didn't have trauma were the people with the highest levels of cortisol. They found this in other things. Cortisol is the thing that allows you to adapt to stress. It's a good thing. And you're like, well, how could that be? I've heard all this stuff that cortisol is bad. Yes, and the problem with cortisol is not that it's cortisol, it's that it's cortisol over a long period of time. So distress happens when the input challenges or exceeds our capacity to cope. For a highly sensitive person, they need to go into the corner for a while and just decompress until their nervous system calms down. Our body is not designed for chronic levels of cortisol. When we're in that stress response, we don't digest as well. That's why people have stomach issues. They tend to tense up. That's why they have musculoskeletal problems, pain. A lot of pain is from tightening up. And over time, it can affect our adrenals and our ability to produce cortisol. And guess what? When we don't produce cortisol, when we exhaust that part of ourselves, when we're trying to pump it up like a slave driver, giving it tons of coffee and caffeine, they can go flat. And guess what? Our ability to adapt goes way down, right? So the bottom line, how a highly sensitive person interprets stress also affects how the body experiences it. So whether that's positive or negative. So we don't want to be stressed out about sensitivity, and we don't want to be stressed out about stress. It's okay to be aroused. And when you're overwhelmed, you may need to do some things to be able to deal with that. By the same token, is pain bad? Imagine if you didn't have pain. You touch your hand on a stove, there's nothing to tell you to pull it away and you get injured. Pain, stress, illness, all have something in common. And that's that they're symptoms. They're not the root. When people feel illness, like with a cold and they're all stuffy and everything, that's a sign that inflammation is happening. It's just a response to inflammation. When we have pain, it's telling us, whether it's emotional or physical, it's telling us where we need to pay attention. So when we pay attention to pain, stress, and illness, they can draw our attention to what needs to be healed at a deeper level. What caused us to get our immune system so down in the first place? Are we driving ourselves too hard? Are there things unresolved? So I want to lead you through a little journey here. So, and so far, are you guys following me so far? Am I going too fast? We're doing okay? Oh, great side of the ice cream. Thank you, Jade. Are you with me? Yeah, more or less. Okay. If I need me to slow down, look and I'll slow down. So imagine like the experience of encountering health issues is like going on the unsinkable ship. You're going on this journey on this unsinkable ship and you're like, great, I'm going on this great journey. Everything's great. I've got a beautiful view. The weather is great. I'm doing great. Life's just going along, do. Everything's great. And then all of a sudden the storm hits. And you may hit something that completely hits you out of the blue. It's like the Titanic when it hit the iceberg. It did not hit the top of the iceberg. It hit what was not seen. And a lot of times these things that hit us, like pain, illness, drama, trauma, they've been building up for a long time and we just weren't aware of it. Not always, sometimes things just hit, but sometimes there can be unconscious things that happen. And all of a sudden, all of our security, everything we based our world on, gets torn apart, we're thrown overboard, and our ship is sinking. And we have one of three responses, or maybe something else. One is we just go into a fear response. We just panic. There's no access to this up here. We're just reacting, just responding, reacting. We get triggered, and we get exhausted and we drown. Or if we're like, maybe we get into fight. This is a little bit more of a resource place. We're going to fight those waves. We're going to make it through, but we're trying so hard and efforting so much. We get exhausted and we drown. Or we freeze. Sometimes this is just so out of my awareness, I don't even know how to adapt. They actually showed that in a study that the people who were more imaginative could adapt better to stress. And if something hits them that is totally out of their network, they won't even get out of the car when there's an accident. They're just in freeze. I'm going to introduce another option, and it leverages your superpower as a sensitive person. Is anybody interested in hearing what that is? Hope so. And it is this capacity for paying attention, right? And having a connection to what I like to call your inner intelligence, that awareness of what's inside. Now, we can only access this part of ourselves when we can learn to diffuse the stress. But when you can stop and listen, if you're drowning, if you have that emotional sense, I'm drowning, you can actually realize, oh, if I just let go, I can let the water support me, right? Many a person has drowned because they panicked and they completely forgot that if they just lean back and let the water support them, they could get a breather. You might notice that the waves, the currents are kind of going a certain direction. And you're like, whoa, maybe if I follow this current, it'll lead me somewhere, right? What is my body telling me about what I need? Do I need to slow down? Do I need a certain herb? Do I need to go see a certain person? You only have access to that part when you have a framework to allow you to access what is your superpower, right? And when you do that, you can arrive safely to shore. Now, your boat may have gone through a transformation, like, okay, my ego may have been like this, I nothing can bother me. And now I'm like, okay, maybe I am just a little sailboat, but I made it to shore. It may not be where you thought you would arrive, but you'll get there. And it may, like I said in the very beginning, be a place that's even better than you ever imagined, right? So when we take the time to clear out past trauma, drama, bringing consciousness to stress, it will help clear the noise that keeps us from accessing those gifts of sensitivity. As Carl Jung used to say, until you make what is unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, right? So if you are in fight, flight, or freeze, you are in an automatic response. It's an unconscious response that we do automatically. And the more you can let go of those unconscious aspects, those unconscious stress, sources of stress, the more, again, you can access your sensitivity superpower, the more you can flow with change and crisis. You know, instead of drowning, you can become a surfer. If you fall off the boat, it can prevent you from falling off the boat when you have, you know, a challenge or a storm that hits. And it can give you tools when you do fall off the boat. And as John Kabat-Zinn said, who is one of the big names in mindfulness, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf.